on Scottish Night Time, let's get right up to date with Scotland Today.
Good evening. Now for a look at the Scottish news. There has been a furious reaction to the news that 400 council jobs are to go at North Lanarkshire's Troubled Direct Labour organisation. Scottish Secretary Donald Dewar says the bulk of the work will now be done by the private sector. Tonight the unions are describing the move as backdoor privatisation. This report from our political correspondent Fiona Ross.
In North Lanarkshire, workers were considering their fate tonight. The DLO there will eventually become a private-public partnership, which means the day-to-day running is taken out of the hands of the council. It also means 400 people lose their jobs.
Oh, well, I think it's disgusting because management's at fault here, not the workforce.
We've been sailed down the river, absolutely sailed down the river.
Workers are not to blame for it, so I don't see why the workers should suffer, yeah.
Today's announcement was the government's response to the debt scandal which hit North Lanarkshire and East Ayrshire earlier this year. North Lanarkshire lost 4.8 million and East Ayrshire 2.5 million. Government ministers were livid at being embarrassed by Labour councils and resolved to get tough.
Difficulties in 1997-98 in both East Ayrshire and North Lanarkshire added around £50 to a bandy taxpayers' council tax bill. Now, you can't allow that situation to continue. I've got to protect both the council taxpayers and those who rely on the services.
The initial plan was to close down both the DLOs. That's been modified, although they'll only be allowed to carry out a third of the work they did previously. Major building programmes will be done by the private sector. In North Lanarkshire, the DLO will eventually become a public-private partnership, and in East Ayrshire, it'll have to operate more as a private company. Unison, the local government trade union, has fought hard against the threat of privatisation and tried to save the jobs. They say they've been let down.
I think it's privatisation by another name, although the government is at great pains to say this is not root and branch privatisation. In practice, that is what it will bring about, and we are very concerned that that has been held up as a model for other councils in Scotland to follow.
The SNP say the workforce and local communities are paying the price for Labour's local government incompetence in areas where unemployment is already high.
2 members of staff at an old people's home in Edinburgh have been suspended following allegations of abuse. 15 elderly residents currently stay at the privately run home in the Liberton area of the city. An interim manager has been appointed. But, as Liz Monaghan reports, details of the allegations aren't clear.
At the San Remo residential home this afternoon, no one was prepared to talk on camera about the allegations. Social work bosses were called in following a complaint alleging residents there had been ill-treated. 2 female members of staff have now been suspended and an interim manager appointed to take charge of the home.
Our immediate concern has been to ensure the safety and continuing care of the 15 residents in the home, and our registration and inspection staff have been visiting there daily since the concerns were raised.
15 elderly people in their 70s, 80s and 90s live at the San Remo home. Tonight, campaigners for the elderly called for a better deal all round.
Age Concern Scotland wants much better vetting systems for people working with older people. That means better access to information beyond what is stored in the Scottish Criminal Records Office. That's what's being proposed for children and young people, and we believe older people should be afforded the same protection as children and young people.
The exact details of the allegations haven't been released. A report is being sent to the Procurator Fiscal.
The Scotland Bill has passed its final legislative hurdle. The bill will become law in the next 2 days, establishing the Scottish Parliament and administration. The Secretary of State for Scotland, Donald Dewar, described it as one of the most significant constitutional changes this century. Our Westminster correspondent Michael Crowe reports.
Peers finished debating the bill at exactly 7:45 p.m. There were some fears that opposition lords would reject the bill at the last minute over the issue of linking between the number of MSPs at Holyrood and MPs at Westminster. In the end, Tory peers backed down and the Liberal Democrats couldn't muster enough support. Donald Dewar, who was in the Lords for the final moments of the debate, says he's thrilled the bill's been passed.
It's going to be one of the measures that is going to be remembered for a very, very long time, and books will be written about it. And to have been part of it and to be able to respond so effectively and quickly to the declared will of the Scottish people with a referendum is something that I will always remember and cherish.
The white paper for the Scottish Parliament with tax-raising powers was published in July last year. The referendum followed close after in September, where the Yes Yes campaigners, Labour, the SNP and the Liberal Democrats, clinched an overwhelming success. The bill then entered the Commons in January this year, and after 192 hours of debate, the longest amount of time devoted to a bill this session, it has finally been passed. Royal assent will follow in the next 2 days.
Relatives of a Livingston teenager who died after a crash involving a drunk driver say his 2-year sentence is far too lenient. 27-year-old Brian Seaton had denied causing the death of Paul Kelly by careless driving on the A89 following a Christmas Eve drinking session. But a jury at Edinburgh Sheriff Court found him guilty by a majority verdict. The victim's father spoke earlier this evening.
I just think it's ridiculous that anybody could go out and do that and just after a year, 2 years maybe, just go back out on the road and that's it, forget about it. Whereas the family and relatives and all that have just got to, day by day, just get on with things and they're not going to forget about it.
An unemployed father of 5 for one of Scotland's poorest housing schemes has been talking for the first time about his £3 million lottery win. John Roberts says he's going to stay in West Pilton in Edinburgh for the time being. The 31-year-old had been hoping to keep his win secret, but has instead been facing tabloid newspaper revelations about his family. Dave Cowan has the story.
Scotland's latest lottery millionaire had hoped to avoid this. In the end, it was impossible. Unemployed for 3 years and disabled after a car crash, John Roberts bought his ticket with his last pound during a trip to Glasgow.
I was actually going to buy a pie, believe it or not. And my mate was going to put his tickets on. I said, here, just get me a lucky dip.
The father of 5 and his wife Linda refused to pose with champagne or their cheque in publicity pictures. Although they're staying in West Pilton meantime, a Jaguar and a generous Christmas is on the cards.
Hello everyone.
Hello. On Saturday, the news was quickly relayed to this bingo hall and John's mother.
You could tell your son's been on the phone, he's won the lottery. I went, aye, right, went away back, finished my game.
The Roberts, however, quickly discovered a downside to their good fortune. As is their right, they'd asked Camelot to keep their identities a secret, but it was a forlorn hope.
One paper published revelations about Mr. Roberts' brother. Today he refused to comment, but described the publicity as scary.
I just want to go on with my life. I just want to do this, get it finished with, get it over with, get on with my life.
Back at the bingo hall, there was support for the family.
I mean, they had their wee bit of luck, let them enjoy it.
If they've won the money, they should just leave them alone and let them live happy.
They should just leave them alone now, let them go on with their lives, that's what I can say.
The Roberts are hoping to step back out of the spotlight. It appears unlikely they'll succeed for some time.
The Defence Secretary George Robertson has announced that the Territorial Army in Scotland is to be cut by a quarter to 4,500 posts. 52 Highland and Lowland TA centres will be retained, but 14 are to close and 4 will be kept for cadets only. Community education in Scotland is to become more of a priority for local authorities following a government review of the service. Touring the Chapelside Centre in Airdrie, Scottish Education Minister Helen Little said the allocation of £102 million, together with specific targets, will ensure community education is no longer the poor relation to formal education. A 30-year-old man has been arrested in connection with yesterday's train crash in Edinburgh. The Euston to Inverness sleeper hit 2 transit vans which had been left on the tracks at Slateford Junction. None of the 95 passengers on board was injured, although the driver had to be treated for shock. The man's expected to appear at Edinburgh Sheriff Court tomorrow. In ice hockey tonight, the Air Eagles have lost against the Czech team Litvinov in a penalty shootout after overtime. However, this means that the Scottish team still get 1 point from the game and look set to become the first British team to qualify for the second round of the European Hockey League.